In the heart of Hollow Creek, a town nestled between ancient forests and misty hills, life had always moved at a slow, predictable pace. It was a place where nothing extraordinary ever happened, where the most excitement one could expect was the annual harvest festival or a new book arriving at the tiny local library. That was, until one fateful day when a new restaurant mysteriously appeared in the town square, La Trattoria del Buio. The arrival of the restaurant was as sudden as it was inexplicable. One day, the old brick building at the end of Main Street was vacant, its windows boarded up and its door locked with chains. The next morning, those same chains had vanished, replaced by an ornate sign that hung over a freshly painted door. The sign bore the name of the restaurant in swirling gold letters, and the building itself had transformed, now painted in deep burgundy and black, exuding an aura of old-world elegance mixed with an unsettling sense of foreboding. Curiosity quickly spread among the townsfolk. They whispered among themselves, speculating about the origins of this strange establishment. No one had seen any construction work or noticed any deliveries, yet here it stood, seemingly overnight. The questions on everyone's lips were the same: who owned this restaurant? Where had it come from? And why had it appeared without any fanfare or announcement? The more superstitious among them muttered about curses and dark magic, but most simply shrugged it off as a strange but welcome addition to their sleepy town. Despite the mystery surrounding it, the restaurant remained empty during the day. Its windows were dark, its door closed, giving the impression that it was nothing more than an abandoned building. Yet, as evening fell and the sky turned from blue to deep purple, something changed. A warm, golden light would begin to glow from within, and the faint but unmistakable scent of rich, delicious food would waft through the air, teasing the senses of anyone nearby. It was a smell unlike anything the townsfolk had ever experienced, rich with exotic spices and herbs, with a deep, earthy undertone that evoked images of faraway lands and ancient forests. The first person in Hollow Creek to set foot inside La Trattoria del Buio was Mrs. Eleanor Green. Eleanor was a widow in her late 60s, a woman known for her impeccable taste and love of fine dining. She had spent much of her life traveling and experiencing the world's culinary delights, and though Hollow Creek was now her home, she often lamented the lack of sophisticated dining options in the town. So, when a crisp, cream-colored envelope appeared on her doorstep one chilly autumn evening, she couldn't resist opening it. Inside was an invitation, handwritten in elegant script. "You are cordially invited to an exclusive dining experience at La Trattoria del Buio. Your presence is requested at 8 p.m. sharp. Dress in your finest. Bon appétit." Eleanor's curiosity was piqued. The invitation was as mysterious as the restaurant itself, and though she couldn't quite place why, she felt a strong compulsion to attend. She spent the rest of the afternoon preparing, choosing her finest silk dress and string of pearls, and as the clock struck 7:45, she set out for the restaurant, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and anticipation. When Eleanor arrived, the restaurant was just as she had imagined, grand, yet somehow intimate, with an air of opulence that bordered on the surreal. The heavy wooden door creaked open as she approached, and she stepped inside, the sound of her heels clicking on the polished marble floor. The door closed behind her with a soft but final thud, and for a moment, she hesitated, feeling a strange sense of unease. But the inviting glow of candlelight and the rich aroma of cooking food soon drew her deeper into the dining room. The room was both luxurious and unsettling. Velvet drapes in deep burgundy framed the windows, and chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their soft, golden light casting flickering shadows across the walls. Each table was meticulously set with crystal glasses, gleaming silver cutlery, and candles that seemed to dance with a life of their own. But it wasn't the decor that captivated Eleanor, it was the scent. It was intoxicating, a heady mix of herbs and spices, with something darker and more primal underneath, something that stirred a hunger in her that she hadn't felt in years. A tall, slender man appeared from the shadows at the far end of the room. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his skin pale and almost translucent in the candlelight. His hair was jet black, slicked back, and his eyes were an unnerving shade of green, so vivid they seemed to glow. He smiled as he approached, revealing perfect, white teeth. "Welcome, Mrs. Green," he said in a voice that was both smooth and soothing, yet with an undertone that sent a shiver down her spine. "I am Alessandro, your host for the evening. Please, follow me." Eleanor felt a strange unease settle over her, but she quickly dismissed it. She was, after all, in a new restaurant, and nerves were to be expected. She followed Alessandro to a secluded table at the back of the room. As she sat down, she noticed that the other tables were empty, though she had the distinct feeling that she was not alone, that unseen eyes were watching her from the shadows. Alessandro handed her a menu, but as she opened it, she was surprised to find the pages completely blank, save for a single word at the top: trust. The chef prepares a special meal for each guest, tailored to their tastes, Alessandro explained, his green eyes never leaving hers. "Shall we begin?" Eleanor nodded, feeling a mix of apprehension and excitement. The idea of a personalized dining experience was intriguing, and she couldn't wait to see what delights the chef had in store for her. The first course was brought out by a waiter who moved so silently, Eleanor hadn't even noticed him approach. It was a delicate soup, its surface shimmering in the candlelight. She took a cautious sip and was immediately captivated by the flavor, a rich, velvety broth that seemed to envelop her senses, leaving her craving more. With each subsequent course, Eleanor found herself sinking deeper into a state of euphoric pleasure. The food was unlike anything she had ever tasted, each dish more decadent and tantalizing than the last. The wine was exquisite, enhancing the flavors of the meal and making her feel light and carefree. Yet, as the evening wore on, she began to notice subtle changes in the atmosphere. The light from the chandeliers seemed to grow dimmer, the shadows longer and more pronounced. The room, once warm and inviting, now felt colder, the silence more oppressive. By the time dessert arrived, a dark, chocolate mousse with a blood-red raspberry coulis, Eleanor was in a strange, dreamlike state. Her mind felt clouded, her thoughts slow and disjointed. She tried to focus on the taste of the dessert, but it was as if her senses were dulled, her connection to reality slipping away. The room around her seemed to pulsate, the walls closing in, and she realized with a jolt of fear that she was no longer in control. Alessandro appeared at her side once more, his presence unsettling in a way she couldn't quite articulate. He leaned in close, his breath cold against her ear as he whispered, "How was your meal, Mrs. Green?" Eleanor tried to respond, but her voice failed her. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. The room was spinning now, the shadows pressing in from all sides. She could feel the darkness wrapping around her, pulling her down into an abyss from which there was no escape. As her vision began to fade, Alessandro's voice cut through the fog in her mind, calm and almost gentle. "Welcome to La Trattoria del Buio, Mrs. Green. Your reservation is permanent." The last thing Eleanor saw before the darkness consumed her was Alessandro's face, twisted into a grotesque smile, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. And then, she was gone, swallowed by the shadows, her presence erased from Hollow Creek as if she had never existed. The next morning, Hollow Creek was abuzz with rumors. Mrs. Eleanor Green, the town's beloved librarian, had vanished without a trace. The police were called in, and a thorough search of her home revealed no signs of a struggle, no clues as to where she might have gone. The only thing out of place was a meal delivered by the local restaurant, still warm and untouched on her kitchen table. Despite the mystery surrounding her disappearance, life in Hollow Creek continued. The townspeople were unsettled, but as days turned into weeks, the memory of Mrs. Green's absence began to fade. The only reminder of her was the darkened windows of her house, a silent testament to her sudden departure. But Hollow Creek's tranquility was not to last. A few weeks later, another invitation appeared, this time at the home of Tom and Laura Mitchell, a young couple who had recently moved to the town. They were the kind of couple that everyone liked, friendly, sociable, always eager to participate in community events. When they received their invitation to dine at La Trattoria del Buio, they were thrilled. The mystery surrounding the restaurant only added to their excitement, and they eagerly accepted the invitation, looking forward to an evening of fine dining. On the night of their reservation, the Mitchells arrived at the restaurant hand in hand, their faces alight with anticipation. They were greeted by Alessandro, who, as always, was impeccably dressed and unfailingly polite. He led them to their table, where they were treated to a meal that surpassed their wildest expectations. The food was sublime, the wine flowing freely, and as the evening wore on, they felt themselves succumbing to the same intoxicating euphoria that had ensnared Eleanor Green. But as the night deepened and the shadows grew darker, the couple began to experience the same creeping dread that had overcome Eleanor. The room grew colder, the atmosphere oppressive, and a sense of foreboding settled over them like a heavy shroud. By the time dessert was served, they were both in a state of near panic, their senses overwhelmed by the strange and unsettling experience. As Alessandro approached them for the final time, his eyes glowing with that same unnatural light, they knew, deep down, that they had made a terrible mistake in coming here. But it was too late. As the darkness closed in around them, they heard Alessandro's voice, soft and mocking, "Thank you for dining at La Trattoria del Buio. Your reservation is permanent." The next morning, the Mitchells were gone, vanished without a trace, just like Eleanor Green before them. Their house was found empty, with no sign of where they had gone. The townsfolk were shocked, but once again, there were no clues, no answers, only a growing sense of fear and unease that hung over Hollow Creek like a dark cloud. As the months passed, more and more people in Hollow Creek received invitations to dine at La Trattoria del Buio, and with each new guest, the pattern repeated itself. The guests would enter the restaurant, lured by the promise of an unforgettable meal, and by morning, they would be gone, their presence in the town erased as if they had never existed. The restaurant itself remained, its doors always closed during the day, only to open at night to welcome its next unsuspecting victim. The legend of La Trattoria del Buio grew, spreading fear and suspicion among the remaining townsfolk. Some tried to warn others, to stop them from accepting the invitations, but the allure of the restaurant was too strong. Those who resisted the temptation were often found with invitations on their doorsteps, their resolve slowly crumbling until they, too, succumbed to the dark pull of the mysterious eatery. In the end, Hollow Creek became a ghost town, its streets empty, its houses abandoned. The only sign of life was the dim, golden light that still shone from the windows of La Trattoria del Buio each night, and the faint, tantalizing scent of food that lingered in the air, drawing in anyone who dared to come close. No one knows what truly happened to the people of Hollow Creek, or what dark forces were at play within the walls of La Trattoria del Buio. The restaurant itself vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving behind nothing but an empty lot and a chilling legend that would be whispered among those who lived in nearby towns for generations to come. Some say that the restaurant still exists, traveling from town to town, its appearance heralding the doom of those who are foolish enough to accept its invitation. Others believe it was all just a story, a cautionary tale meant to warn people about the dangers of giving in to temptation. But there are those who know the truth, who have seen the dark, hollow eyes of those who escaped the restaurant's grasp, forever haunted by the memory of the meal that almost consumed them. For La Trattoria del Buio is no ordinary restaurant. It is a place of darkness, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and where the price of a meal is far more than anyone could ever imagine. So, if you ever find yourself in a quiet, forgotten town, and you happen to smell the scent of exotic spices and rich, earthy flavors in the air, be wary. And if you receive a mysterious invitation to dine at a restaurant that you've never seen before, think twice before you accept. For once you enter La Trattoria del Buio, there may be no escape.